And we are blessed to welcome Reverend Elizabeth Stamper with us today. She is a writer, a meditation teacher, interfaith minister, and a licensed psychotherapist based in Melbourne, Florida. Today, we are talking about understanding suffering and the relief of suffering, a transpersonal view. Thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Yeah, it's interesting that Thich Nhat Hanh was brought forth with the poem prayer that he said, because one of the quotes of his that really struck me so deeply lately was when he was being interviewed by Krista Tippett, and he said that if if it doesn't include heaven, if it doesn't include suffering, it's not heaven. And Krista Tippett said, wait a minute, I thought heaven was the place there's no suffering. And he said, no, no, if it doesn't include suffering, it's not heaven. So, part of the talk today is about why do we suffer, and what meaning can we make out of the suffering that we experience. And I think that I don't have to define suffering so much, because we all know it when we feel it, right? We know it when we feel it. We know it when other people feel it. We are that tuned in and empathetic with each other. We know it when we feel it on the whole spectrum too, that suffering on one end of the spectrum, it can be just like a small worry or a concern, or a blister starting on your foot as you're taking a hike. But on the other end of the spectrum, it's depression, it's serious illness, it's the reality of war on our planet in our times. So the question of why do we suffer is a question that humans have been asking forever, because we are meaning making creatures. We need to make sense of what happens to us. Maybe we don't need to make sense so much of the joys and the peace. We'll just accept them. But when times are hard, we want to understand, and we want to, if the meaning isn't obvious, oh, this, I stubbed my toe because I wasn't looking and that's why I'm feeling this pain, then we want to go deeper and investigate. And even if we can't immediately find the meaning, we will stay at it, until we discover or make meaning from what happens. This life-changing question, it's also a world-changing question. We wouldn't have Buddhism, this huge religion that millions of people around the planet practice, if one person 2,500 years ago hadn't grappled with that same question. Why do we suffer? He had everything. He was a prince. He was wealthy. He was healthy. He had a beautiful family, a beautiful kingdom. But when he happened to see and realize that everyone gets sick and everyone suffers and ages and dies, he had to leave everything and go find the answer. Why do we suffer? And how do we ease that suffering? So I hope to offer a few insights today, but first I get to tell you a story. And like every story, it starts with once upon a time. So once upon a time, there was a small kingdom, and there was a terrible, horrible monster that was terrorizing this kingdom. And there was nothing that they could do to get rid of the monster. But one day the monster shows up in front of the king and all his people, and he says, I will stop terrorizing. I will leave your homeland in peace if, and only if, you will give me your daughter, the princess, as my bride. So the princess was there and she heard this, and because she was so courageous and devoted to her homeland, that she spoke up before her father could even protest. She said, "Of course, yes, yes, I will marry you." So a date was set for the wedding, and as that day got closer and closer, the princess became more and more frightened. And so finally, she went to a wise woman in the kingdom and she asked what she should do. And the wise woman looked into the past and she looked into the future, and then she looked at the trembling princess before her and she said, "Well, yes, yes, you must marry the monster. But if you follow these instructions I will give you now, everything will be well." And she said, "On the morning of your wedding, you must put on your wedding dress and then put another dress on top of that, and another wedding dress on top of that, and another one until you are wearing 10 wedding dresses. And then when you're in front of your new husband on the evening of your wedding, you will take off the first dress and ask him to take off one of his skins. And then you will ask him to take off the second dress and again ask him to please take off his next skin. And on until you have taken off all of your wedding dresses. And then you must embrace him. No matter what, you must embrace him." And so this calmed her a little bit. She was still very worried and nervous, but she trusted the wise woman. So the day of her wedding came and she did as she was told. She put on 10 wedding dresses and they had the ceremony. And then there's the wedding night and she's in there, and her groom, her new husband, still a terrible, horrible monster, is in front of her. And she takes off the first dress and says, "And now I must request that you take off one of your dresses, one of your skins." And so it goes. And so it goes up until her last wedding dress. And he takes off the last skin. He keeps shedding these skins one after another after another. Apparently monsters have a lot of skins. But he's still, even after the last skin, he's still a terrible, horrible monster. And she must step forward and embrace him. And so she does. And that is when he transforms. And he becomes that kind and good and handsome human being that he always was deep inside, that he had been before the world got to him, and that he always would be deep inside. And so of course then they lived happily ever after. Because that's also how fairy tales end. So I've shared this story a few different times, and like every fairy tale, there's so many ways we can interpret it. And in the past, I related it to being in an intimate relationship with another person, and how you have to kind of keep revealing yourself, keep shedding the masks that you wear, the defenses, the ways that we hide from each other, and just become more and more vulnerable. And that's what allows for real intimacy. And we know that that also takes tremendous courage to do that. But in this talk this morning, I want to share the idea that the monster in the story that we need to come into relationship with in a different way is our own suffering. It's our own fear and our pain. It's whatever's going on in our body, the physical sensations that just feel horrific, or the emotional sensations that are so difficult. And as we come into a different relationship, because this is one of the key words in this story, when the world got a hold of him, before the world got a hold of him, he still was that core self, that beautiful goodness and kindness, what Buddhists call our basic goodness, what Christians call our Christ consciousness. And so as we come into different relationship with our internal monsters, so to speak, we will also find hiding within them that same basic goodness and that same pure consciousness that is love. So the means that I want to talk about today, the strategy, there are many, of course, as a therapist, as a healer, I've encountered and experienced the powerful and wonderful effects of many different modalities that help us let go and move through suffering. Today, I'm just going to talk about the breath and have a little bit of it be very experiential. So hopefully I have time. We started a little bit late, but hopefully I have time to share with you and let you practice a few different kinds of breath. So let's just start with what we all probably do instinctually, and that is that deep breath with the long sigh on the exhale. So when our nervous system is not hijacked, or when it is and we can recognize that it is, then this deep breath, I'm going to share with you, and I invite you to do it with me if you feel like it, if you feel inspired to. And just think about these 3 different things we can do immediately when we want to feel just a wave of calming, peaceful energy move through us and release us from whatever is the monster that wanted to grab us in that moment. So first thing, change your posture. Just notice whatever posture you're in. Maybe just sit up a little bit. Feel your feet and press down on the floor with your feet so that you take presence within your whole body. So number 1, change the posture. Number 2, take 3 really deep, really slow breaths. And remember to exhale fully on the exhale. So breathing in as deeply as you can in the moment. And then as you exhale, really let go. Empty out that breath. Empty the breath. Press down with the feet, breathe in. And exhale with a sigh. Ah. When we relax the jaw, where many of us hold tension, and open the mouth to let out that sigh, that healing breath can move even more powerfully through the body. And so for that last long, deep sighing breath, make the sound of your sigh so that you hear it. So know that when you hear the sound of your sigh, your body is hearing it too. And it's a comforting sound. It's a sound that says, I'm letting go in this moment. I'm just letting go. So that is the first breathing mechanism that I want to share with you. And it involves change your posture, long, deep sigh, exhale with the mouth open and making the sound of the sigh. Those 3 pieces of that. letting it go all the way through the body. Hopefully everyone feels a little more peaceful just doing that much and doing it together. The next breath I want to talk about is called, I'm calling it a gentle breath. And this, what I've noticed, a lot of these things, my own clients have taught me over the years. So sometimes when you tell a person or you tell yourself, take a long, deep breath, you may encounter a place in your chest, in your throat or in your chest, where the breath is it won't go any further. We've been told, oh, do that deep belly breath, but my breath kind of stops here or here or here or in the diaphragm. And so what you can try, if you notice that, is just take the breath to the place in your body where you feel that it stops naturally. So wherever the breath, it's tight right here, it's tight here, that's a place where we have a constriction. For some good reason, we've all done this. We've constricted in our throat many times when we had things we wanted to say or needed to say, feelings to express, but we just couldn't. You shouldn't, or you couldn't, or you wouldn't, for one reason or another. Constriction can hold there then habitually in our throat. So if it's our throat, we just want to take a gentle breath right to the throat and meet that constriction. Don't try to push past it, but with real gentleness and self-compassion, bring the breath right to where you feel that tightness. And just as you're meeting that contraction, say, I hear you. I hear you. I get that you're tight and you have a reason to be, and it's okay. So you're not trying to fix it or change it or avoid it. You're meeting that discomfort, that little bit of suffering lodged in your throat. You're meeting it right where it is. And you're just being present. And that your presence and your compassion carried with your breath will begin to ease that suffering right there. And it might be in your heart, and your breath goes down just that far, and it doesn't go any further because it meets with a pain in your heart. It meets with an old heartbreak or tightness, a memory, a loss, something unhealed in your heart. So again, just a slow, deep breath to meet that suffering in your own heart with kindness, with understanding, with gentleness. So we know from the beginning of the meeting today that someone very dear to many members of the Unitarian Church is in hospice and is looking like she might be leaving this world soon, and that's a real loss, and I could feel the sense of that loss and the sorrow that people had around this dear friend leaving. So a lot of times, in this world we live in, well, actually very, very young, we feel sad, we feel lost, we feel grief. But we're told, be a big girl. Big girls don't cry. Boys don't cry. We stuff those tears down and we push that emotion down, and it leaves a suffering inside us that we then we'll work with at some point in our lives if or when we're ready. So again, just the gentle breath, the compassionate breath, is to find wherever in your own body you feel some physical pain or the remnants of some emotional pain, some tightness. and you bring and you meet it with your understanding, which is powerful, and your compassion, which is healing. So the very last breath, I'm not going to talk about this very much because we've all been on the Zoom for a long time and the hour of the service is closing, but maybe I can come back to it another time. It's a breath work that I use as a therapist. I've been using since 1986, and it's been called by many names. One name is conscious connected breath work. Another name is holotropic breath work. And if you're curious, you can Google those words later, holotropic breath work. When I was introduced to it back in the 80s, it was called rebirthing breath work. And this breath work is so powerful. It was discovered by a psychiatrist who really wanted to be able to get past the defense mechanisms of our conscious mind, our ego mind, and get to the subconscious where our deep traumas are held. Those deep unresolved wounds that everybody has are held in the subconscious mind. And if they're in the subconscious mind, they're also held in the body, somewhere in the body. And so this conscious connected breath work, actually, we really, when we start to do this, we do it with a helper because we need to feel safe in order to go past the barriers to the subconscious that we all have. You know, that barrier is there for a good reason. We repress or suppress things because we have to function in life. We can't go around walking around with open wounds, open emotional wounds, open physical wounds. So we repress for a reason. But that doesn't make help those wounds heal. And if we're ready or when we're ready, there are these modalities that help us go deeper into our own being and find the parts of us that carry old trauma, old unresolved grief, long repressed abuse, many different things. They also carry not just trauma of like a big terrible thing happening to us, but kind of like, remember I said before the world got hold of him, but got hold of the monster and made him start to cover up his true self. It's these messages that we've gotten from our religions and from our culture, from the parenting philosophies that have just told to us over and over and over again. And so there are little kids inside of us that say, I better not feel what I feel. I better not get close to another person. It's not safe. I better not really reveal my heart or my pain or my sorrow or my power. I better not reveal my power because then I will be shamed or I'll be punished or I'll be made small. So that too, you know, when we're born, we come in just full of ourselves. And that self is good and kind and beautiful and powerful. So this last, I will leave you just being maybe intrigued about, hopefully intrigued about breath work, powerful, conscious, connected breath work. It happens, I do that individually with clients and people. I do it in groups. There are workshops. You can even do it online. There are workshops online that you can tune in with people around the world who are doing breath work together. But the good news is that that in this process of wanting to just shed whatever's holding us back, to release and become our kind of our naked, free, authentic selves with one another, that we can do that. And it's a beautiful, powerful journey to have the commitment to that. To me, is the spiritual journey. It's to become more and more free to be my authentic, real, good, innocent, loving, happy self, peaceful self, so that then I can bring that vibration of that peace and that joy and that harmony to the world that is asking us for it, asking all of us for it. So I thank you very much for listening,